Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding, a world-class vision, world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Teachers Talk Radio Twilight Show every second Tuesday with me, Timia. Here we discuss hot topics mostly in higher education with my fascinating guests. And for today, I have a very, very exciting topic, which is an evergreen, but still we'll discuss how much it changes. And it is student engagement, rethinking student engagement, looking at it from various perspectives. We all know that now in the digital age, when we have AI, YouTube, TikTok, and we have the smartphones are there for the students to actually compete with the teacher, it might become even more difficult to keep the attention and the engagement, and we will discuss how to still do it. And I'll have absolutely fascinating guests who I will very, very shortly invite to the stage. And meanwhile, I would like to thank you, everybody who is watching us live on Teachers Talk Radio, social media channels, and also those who will check the recording later. So before I invite my guests, just very shortly, thanks to our sponsor, johncattbookshop.com, who actually have very good books about student engagement. I just checked. And John Catt Educational are publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. You can level up your professional development if you visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. And please use the code GCTTR2425 and you get 20% off of your order. And now it's my greatest pleasure to invite my guests. First of all, Dr. Jill Stacey, who is a course director at LCCA. Hi, Jill. Thank you so much for coming to the show. Hello.
Hi, Tamia. Thank you so much for inviting me. Looking forward to the discussion. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And our second guest is Inka Hyde-Wright. Hi, Inka. Thank you for coming to the show. And Inka is coming from Warwick University Graduate Management Trainee Program and will also represent the student voice, which is very, very important when we talk about student engagement or anything about learning and teaching, right? Inka is also now on a placement in the Student Union, which is also very, very good. It's not just her voice, but actually student body's voice. Hi, Inka, and thank you for being here.
Hi, it's great to be here, so thank you.
So it's going to be a real exciting hour with you, the two of you, but also with our listeners and the viewers. And I really would like to encourage everybody to add a comment. We will really read and answer every comment. It can be a question, a tip, or you can share your own experience. And I thought we could start with all being a bit students now. And if we could all in the call, and also those who listen to us, remember one lecturer or teacher who was really engaging whenever in your life, and if we could share why, and it could be just one. And while you're thinking, because I was not sharing this question before, I just can share one, that mine, and then I will hand it over to the two of you. So for me, it was actually in economics. There was a lecturer, it was in my master's studies, and economics is not particularly exciting normally how it's presented, and it was just something of a kind of just a compulsory subject as part of the communication course. But this particular lecturer asked us to search for something, a piece of news that is happening that week before the class, and coming to the class actually looking at how that piece of news was in relation to what happens in the economy in the world. And that was such an eye-opener that ever since then, and it was a long time ago, ever since then, I'm looking at it as relational, right? News and the economy. And suddenly, why I really liked it, and I also try to remember this as a tool when I'm doing my own teaching, that he really made it relational and relevant to what's happening in the world, and not just something that is happening in the classroom. And that really kept us engaging. And also, in a way, we were excited to prepare for that class, because we knew that we have to come, we have to explain, and we ourselves will learn from it. So this is my story. I'm very thankful to that lecturer. So maybe, Jill, can I pass it on to you? What is a memorable experience from any teacher you've had?
Absolutely. So, funnily enough, actually, mine is in my master's as well. And mine was English literature. And I'd been out of education for a while, so I hadn't gone degree, masters. I'd gone degree, and then I'd gone into teaching. And then I realised I wanted to obviously further my own sort of education or my love of the subject. So obviously I was a bit nervous. Went into obviously the first class, and I think what made me feel comfortable or made me feel quite excited was that she built my confidence in a way that allowed me to speak freely in front of the class. So it was kind of breaking it down, working in pairs, working with different people so that we kind of built a bond between each other as peers. And then obviously we felt comfortable to talk in front of one another because, I don't know if Inka, you might find the same, but students, talking in front of a class, in front of strangers, first of all, who are not your age range, can be quite intimidating. So she definitely gave me a voice. She definitely made me feel valued, and she definitely made me feel that I could say something, even if it was wrong, that kind of safe space. And I will never forget that. And I think that influenced my own teaching about creating that safe space for students.
It's so powerful.
Thank you. Absolutely. It's so important, really, to connect with others, right? Inka, do
Oh
you
God,
have
Yeah,
any?
no, without a doubt. And there's actually, I feel very fortunate in terms of there's quite a few people that and times that jump to my mind in terms of, oh, this made a really big difference to me. And I think the biggest like the thing that's made the biggest difference to me is, and then I'll go into like a more specific example, but is when I've been able to kind of like similar to what you said to me in terms of like relates what I'm learning to something that is like kind of external to the academic environment or like a different context, so I can see its application in different ways. I'm actually going to give like a little shout out to one of my lecturers during like COVID, because he managed to make online lectures still really engaging. Like it was all about actually vision and interpretation and perception, and he spoke about his cockerel and how they can see different colors to us. And I just remember that, and like how like he would use different things that were like in his house or in his garden to kind of bring the work to life, even though it's an asynchronous lecture, which I think is really skillful and I think
That's
deserves a lot of
absolutely
credit. But yeah, I think what you said, Jill, in terms of when staff have given students voice and like basically just feeling valued, feeling seen is really powerful.
yeah.
So yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a very good point that you mentioned the times during COVID or any kind of distance learning, online learning, which happens also in these days, and how to keep that relational as well, right? Jill, you wanted to?
Yeah, I was going to say, Inka, you raised such a fantastic point about during COVID and how, we as a world had to embrace sort of technology and change the way we teach. Because I was
Yeah.
teaching then, and going from just the classroom then suddenly online and using all these new platforms, but also, as you said, trying to keep student engagement. I think definitely developed me as a practitioner,
Yeah.
and has
Mm.
I think enhanced my teaching practice. But yeah, it was quite daunting, but I think it had definitely better impact, and the way you rethink how to engage online, especially when students are because mine was live, so when students are very reluctant to turn on the cameras, and you've got to
Yes.
try and keep them engaged.
That's a good point.
So yeah, definitely. I mean, and it made me become more proficient with AI tools as well, which we students, we are definitely going into, well, we're into the AI age, as it were, so we cannot escape this. So in a way, although obviously COVID was awful, I think it changed teaching in a way that enhanced it, and has now become part of, I'd like to think, everyday practice.
Yeah, well, like COVID actually saved me academically, and I will go like that. I know that sounds quite extreme, but so I was late diagnosed with dyslexia and didn't know I was dyslexic until end of first year, which was literally when like lockdown was about to happen. And so then to go online, it actually saved me because I was able to pause lectures, rewind, take proper notes. Whereas I was struggling so much, I couldn't keep any of the information that lecturers were sharing with me in my head. So it saved me so much. And luckily then I got academic support, which was really, really fantastic. But I remember like I would be the only person to have my camera on because it forced me to engage. It's like, no, I'm accountable. Like people can see whether I'm engaged or not. But then going back to face, people knew me, but I didn't know them. It was a weird thing.
And actually, you're right, Inka. It also, because I love the way you said that you felt better because you could stop lectures, you could prepare, and you had more time. And I think that is where also the flip learning became really, really beneficial. So you would give this, I remember giving my students the materials before we went online, they would feel prepared. And I think that helped those reluctant learners that, you know, are very quiet, very shy, that they knew what the subject matter was going to be. They knew what the topic was going to be. And I had one student who we were looking at, I think we were looking at Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and he started going on about the whole romantic movement, and I was like, what's happened? And he was like, oh, I was really interested. Once I read that extract, I really wanted to go and do research, and I'd seen a different side to him that I'd never seen before, and he just excelled. He just excelled.
But something that I found really powerful, like I found, so when I was really struggling and it was like face-to-face lectures, like something that I did struggle with was sitting in a lecture theatre with people, and like, you know, you can see people disengaged, or you can hear, oh, I'm not so interested in this, and then straight away you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be as interested in this. Like you feel that kind of peer pressure, especially when you're new into the university, you want to fit in. So when like actually you're in your own space, you're learning, you can kind of thrive in the areas that you're wanting. Like it's like, well, actually I really want to learn more about this, so I'm going to, like, you're not hearing from like friends or peers, oh, I'm not interested in that, or you know, whatever. So it's quite
we almost want to go back to online now.
No.
I think, we don't. And actually, we have a good comment from Dr. Femi. Thank you for listening. Very insightful memories from you. Oh, thanks very much. And please share, everybody who is listening. Thank you, everybody who are listening to us. And ladies, I wanted to ask this later on, but you've just brought this up with this online stuff. What is actually classified as engagement? Because what do we mean by that? We use this terminology a lot, right? But is it like students listening? Is it students being prepared? Is it them interacting? Is it students remembering us 10 years from now, just like how we shared some of the memories, or a year later? Is it having an impact on that student's journey or future? Because we've just shared a couple of things, and it was very good that you pointed out, Inka, the COVID thing, that this was the first time I also was teaching and I had to face like cameras not being on. And that was weird. And that I also had to reflect on myself, how I, as a teacher, work with that. And then I had to say, does it mean they don't engage? Not, probably not. You've just said that actually you were, probably not at that time. Probably you listened to it later. Probably you just felt more, you just felt safer, more comfortable. So the question, to round it up a bit, what do you classify as engagement if we discuss this topic?
I think oh, sorry, Inka.
No, you go.
I think
I love this. I will just remove myself from the stage and you ladies talk. No, I love this.
I think it's different for each student, to be honest. I don't think we can classify it as a broad definition. I think engagement, like as Inka said, her engagement was being able to stop, pause lectures, write her notes, and use her own kind of methods to learn. So and yet some people, some students might be quiet during a lesson, but they're going back, they're obviously rewatching, they're making notes, or they might be putting stuff in the chat. So they might not be, so confident at speaking, but they might put comments in the chat. So I think we need to look at engagement as being specific to the individual. I don't know if you were going to say something similar, Inka.
Yeah, I was. I think being open to that engagement can look different for everyone. And yeah, there's going to be similarities in different people. But I think being open to that there are different ways that people engage. And there's going to be so many different factors that influence people's engagement and why they're engaging in a certain way. And I think remaining open to that and remaining open to experimenting with different ways of engaging and always inviting feedback is like, say you try a new way of engaging, like, or trying to engage students, like being open to feedback of, oh, okay, actually this hasn't worked as I intended. This has instead got different information. So like being open to thinking and working with those students in terms of, okay, what would you like to see? Or yeah, if actually you've ended up engaging a different group of students to the ones you intended, how can you reach those students and tapping into those different channels and looking at where they are engaging, and the reasons behind why they might not be engaging the materials that you're wanting them to. Because I remember one lecturer, they made it really difficult for us to find our materials, and they're like, it's just part of the student experience. And it's like, actually, it's just making me disengaged because I'm desperately trying to find it, but you're putting it in different spaces and I can't actually, it's just not accessible.
To have a good user experience.
I think you're absolutely right, Inka, and I think it is about, it's about us as like lecturers or facilitators. It's removing the barriers, so you can have the best possible learning experience you can. For example, I think we're very good at saying engagement is all about students speaking, but as you say, Inka, I don't think it's just about that. So sorry to go back to obviously being on digital and COVID, but I learned things like Mentimeter and things like that, and a student may be quiet, but then if you look, they're engaged in the quizzes, they're engaged in the Mentimeter, and learning is taking place. So I think it's up to us as facilitators to find that platform where every student, and this is where adaptive teaching comes in here, where every student can contribute, can feel valued, and can feel that they are engaged, but not necessarily through the traditional way, which is, oh, you're not talking, therefore you're not engaging.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's up to us as lecturers, facilitators,
absolutely.
to remove those barriers.
And it's good that you point this out, really, Jo, because it's the personality types. And also, if you talk about students from widening participation backgrounds, obviously, sometimes they are there in the evening after a whole day of working, or they are coming in at the weekend after a whole week of working, and or working during the night, who actually work and not just study. So you also have to take into account these kind of circumstances. They might not be as sparkling, when they come in, and it is also a personality thing. But now,
I was just gonna say, well, also I remember this one time where it's like during my masters. So I've been a widening participation student throughout undergrad and my masters, and I had really heavy caring responsibilities, and I was commuting during my masters. And I remember literally, I think just as I'd got home from a seminar, seeing a message going, oh, by the way, there's this information session on PhDs at 5 p.m. this evening. Well, in person on campus, I can't get to that. Like, there was no notice. It's in person. Like, and as far as I'm aware, the information wasn't disseminated afterwards. So it's like, I think that's where it's like always have your audience in mind as to when you're thinking about what you're doing, which sounds, I know, is incredibly kind of basic, but
it's very important.
Because actually you're not going to be getting you need to think about the scheduling. You need to be thinking about all those different people who might be interested, and those who you maybe just haven't thought, like thinking about how you can include different voices, how you can make the information as accessible as possible, even if it's you run the session in person and then you put up like a little summary video and written video online. But little things like that really matter.
Thank you, Inka. Good to hear the student voice. And I will just add another comment again from Femi. Thank you. No way, not going back to online, just relating back to our previous point. I love to be able to read the room and to be able to engage well. Yeah, reading the room, very nice. We'll come to that, Femi. And I actually will also mention something I learned from you later on. So please stay on. And everybody who's listening to us, just share comments, questions, or tips. And I actually would like to go to this part of the show, is to talk a bit about some practical tips we can share. And I know, Jill, that you are very experienced in active learning, adaptive learning. If you could, you also delivered a great session at the staff development digital batch session on adaptive learning, but I know about active learning as well. Can you talk a bit about, like, really in a very practitioner sense in what we can do today?
Adaptive learning is kind of like the new iteration of differentiation, and of teachers that have been obviously in the profession a long time have always heard about differentiation. And normally it puts the onus on the teacher to produce millions and millions of different resources for this child who is at this level, for this student who's at this level. And in a way, differentiation can cause, rather than being inclusive, it can cause an exclusive environment. So students never kind of communicate with peers that might be a little bit higher than them, and they're always doing work that possibly is different from the peer that they're sitting next to. Whereas adaptive teaching is high expectations for all, and lecturers adapting in the moment and using assessment for learning to make sure that every student hits the outcomes that are expected of the module or the course or the lesson. And it places a lot on scaffolding, so that it doesn't matter whether a student doesn't understand something. It's about, this student might need this scaffolding, or this student might need this, in order to reach, as I said, the high expectations of the outcome. So it's all about, and as Femi said, about reading the room. So it's all about knowing your students, and that's where obviously the face-to-face comes, or face-to-face teaching, I think, has its bonus, has its benefits, because you know your students well. You need to know where your students are at, and obviously you need to have prior knowledge as well. So it's all about building that lecturer-learner relationship, which I think is the core of everything. So once you have that relationship, you can then start putting in strategies in order to support your students in the room. Because let's be honest, we go into lecturing because we want to make sure that every student excels. So it could look like things like sentence starters, it can look like peer assessment, it can look like using criteria. And I'm a big believer in students using criteria so that they know why they're doing something, what they're doing, and how they're going to get there. So it's basically on the spot, and that's where your teaching experience comes into it, so that you can guide all students. And that's how I've kind of always taught, and I've always had, I've gone from sort of differentiation, whereas we sort of separated out the classes, but it's also about bringing the students together as one and doing flexible grouping, instead of, these students are stretch and challenge, so you're always going to be in this group. These challenge are a little bit falling behind, so you're going to be in this group. No. It's all about coming together and using students being as learning resources, basically. That's what I've always.
Thank you, Jill. That is excellent. But can I just before we go to Inka, I'm sure she has to share a little bit of devil's advocate here. I mean, if you have 30 students, how do you build that relationship with each, and how do you know each of them, and then do this adaptive teaching in a way that it's not so overwhelming for the lecturer?
Well, the first thing, obviously, is to build a relationship with them. So I know it sounds really stupid, and everybody just says, but know their names, know a little bit about them, know their background, know why they're coming for university, what are their goals. Students respond well when they know that you're there and you care and you want to obviously help. So it's basically building that kind of initial get together. Who are you in the first kind of lesson, and then after the first activity, you will see the ones that are confident, you will see the ones that are quiet, you will see the ones that possibly are quicker than others. So you can literally, when you're doing your teaching, you can start to pick out students and where they're at. And then it's going around, it's through questioning, it's through, the use of questioning that you do. It's assessment for learning, to be honest. And that's how you start to build up a relationship. So it's verbal feedback. It's also seeing the work, written feedback. It's also peer assessment, getting each other to work together. How do they work together? So it's literally all these different kind of strategies where you will very quickly build up a picture of your classroom and your students.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fantastic. Thanks very much. Inka, do you have anything on this? So actually, what I really would like to hear from you, what are the things you're representing a student body that you really find hard and you would really want to feedback if now you really have not a voice and a mic? to lecturers overall that you find, like you've already mentioned some, and it's very hard to find things. I think that is a very good point. We don't really deal with that when we talk about student engagement, and this is why I asked this. It's not only what we do in the classroom, but what we do before, how the VLE looks like, and how everything, whole user experience from the beginning to the end, right? So if you had like the magic wanding or anything that you, I don't know, feel could be fed back now, it's your stage.
Oh, there's so many things that I feel I could speak
Okay,
about.
please do. We are listening and taking notes, okay?
But I think in terms of, I know that it's a big thing at the moment in terms of because of COVID, people are like, oh, they're not coming to lectures as much. But it's like engagement could still be there. It's just maybe it looks different. And I think that can be difficult for the student and the staff for different reasons. Because I understand, like, if you're a staff member and you're expecting, say, 300 students from the cohort because you're teaching a core module and only half, if that, turn up, it is kind of concerning. But then I guess it's also like, oh, okay, they do exist when there's a monitoring point. But I think it's kind of thinking, actually, it's not necessarily that they're disengaged. Some will be, and it's trying to, keep an eye on those as to, like, why is it, like, how can we support these people? Like, is it that, they're struggling to afford the bus fare to campus? Okay, what support can we highlight to them? And so I guess, like, not just looking at the academic, but also looking at the well-being side of things. And I think it's kind of like that kind of links in terms of, like, personal tutoring. Like, I know sometimes it's like, oh, should we only be looking at academic and only be supporting academic? But it's like, well, in order to support academic, you need to look at the wider picture. And that's not to say that personal tutors need to be experts in well-being, but it's like understanding, right, okay, you know what, this student would benefit from this support, and signposting, but not just signposting, connecting them with that support, because sometimes it's that connection that is really difficult. But I think it can be, I like what you said, Jill. I think it can be really challenging group work, for example. But I think that's where you do learn so much about like different ways of working with different people. So I remember when I did teamwork, which is a virtual intercultural internship that Warwick runs. And I remember being really aware. So, like, we're all there. I knew that everyone in the group that I was placed in, they're all there because they want to get something out of this. Everyone's got something to contribute. And I remember as soon as we kind of started our call and first met each other, because it was all online, there were some really quiet people. There were people kind of like me who were like happy to like have a chat. And I was like, oh, this could be really dangerous, because the louder people could end up continuing to be louder, and the quiet people could become quieter. And I remember just kind of going, hey, like, do you fancy like randomly generating pairs, and we'll chat about our ideas just in our pairs, and then we'll come back as a group? And honestly, the difference when we then came back as a group, every single person spoke, and literally when everyone shared their ideas, it's like, well, why don't we do all of them? Because actually, if you two want to focus on that area, and you two want to focus on that area, we can create all these puzzle pieces. And I remember, like, when we presented it to the organization, because we were partnered with an organization, they're like, oh, we didn't expect you to do all this. But it was great because everyone contributed, and like some of the students were really interested in policy. I had no idea about policy. I'd never really had anything. I'd never had any education around it. So I just said, hey, like, could I come along? Could I work on this with you? Like, you lead it, but I'd really like to learn. And, everyone was really receptive to just like supporting each other, which I think is lovely. And I think creating that environment where students can support each other, but then it does rely on educators like you, Jill, who do give space and time and demonstrate, you model how this can action. And I think what can be really challenging for engagement actually is when like flexible assessments are developed. Cool, brill. Like, I could choose, instead of doing an essay, to do a podcast. But if then the lecturer goes, I've got no experience in podcasting, you're going to have to figure out yourself, and this is a deadline in 4 weeks, funnily enough, I'm still going to lean towards an essay, even though I don't want to, because I've been forced into a rabbit hole. So I think if you truly want students to explore different assessment methods, equip them, even if you don't know personally how to do it, signpost them to, hey, this is a great video, or this is a great resource on how to develop your own podcast or edit and things like that, because then you really are equipping them with the knowledge and therefore skills to experiment and to grow their skills, which will support them in further education and employment. Sorry, I feel like I've gone off on a little tangent, but there's so much.
No, this is what we're needing. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Very good point, brilliant point. And actually putting in pairs, I remember that, Jill, actually this was one of your tips and at that development not podcast, digital bed session. So that's a very good one. And thank you, Inka, for pointing this out as well. And I'd like to come to it later also on how we think that, oh, it's exciting and they could do it, but there are some who will not be equipped and probably will not even say it, because we just assume that just because we have the students, they all will be excited. So I think it's a really, really good point.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, Jill, did you want to react to anything, or
I mean, Inka, you made some fantastic points there. And it is, as I say, it's about making students feel comfortable. And when you obviously start, as you say, as a whole class, it's too daunting. It's absolutely too daunting. So as you say, you need to break into groups, even to pairs, in order for a student to feel comfortable speaking to each other. And when they do, as you say, and you get that way of working and you work in a group, it's exactly what you said, Inka. It's about giving students different roles or different things to look on or to focus on. In that way, you all bring your strengths, and you're not all, as you say, the dominant one takes over, the quiet one recedes into the background, which is what we don't want. And it's about using the strengths, and then as I said, using each other as learning tools, as resources.
Well, I think creating space where it's like you're comfortable to be uncomfortable, because
Yeah.
like, I think sometimes it's like, oh, we just want to make things easy, we want to like reduce anxiety so it doesn't exist, but it's like you need to be challenged, and with challenge you feel uncomfortable, and it's like it's creating that safe, supportive space where students can be like, I want to be challenged, and I can be challenged, and oh, this feels risky, but no, it's okay, and I think that's where it is so important to I in one of in a strategy at Warwick, it says about risk taking, but it's like you need to model that, because I mean, where really in education are we celebrated for risk taking? It's only when we succeed that we then talk about the risk taking and failure. And we don't really, we avoid talking about failure and risk taking when we're doing it, and partly that's because we are in it and we need time to reflect and go, oh, you know what, that was a risk, or that really didn't work. But I think sometimes also you can speak when you've like succeeded or like are deemed to succeed, you feel more comfortable talking about those challenging times.
That's a very good point, actually, that you can sometimes say that I would like to experiment with something to students. And actually, I think even Femi, who is in the call, mentioned it to me when I interviewed them earlier, that I just, as I remember well, that we will experiment with something. Let's see how it works. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't. So it's not just that, okay, I have to pretend like everything works.
And the thing is, ironically, we learn more from making mistakes, which is what I say to my students.
And then we should really
always remember the mistakes we make, and we look at why we made that mistake, and we change the behavior, and that's the risk taking. And that's what I say to my students. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. In fact, you'll probably learn more from making the mistake. And that's the way forward, as you say, because traditionally, if we think about schools, which I've also taught in, that is even more daunting. That's a place where, I have to have the right answer. And if I don't, I'm going to look stupid, especially at that age in front of peers. But you're right. It's all about challenge as well, because unless students are challenged, the knowledge won't go into their long-term memory. So it is about challenge, but creating that space where students feel comfortable to take the challenge, and they don't mind if they might not get there on first try, which is what I always say. You can never have anything perfect first time. You have to do it again, maybe do it again, have another go, and then come together. And then when you get there, as you say, Inka, you feel the achievement.
Well, I think it's incredibly difficult, but also powerful for say, like, for example, let's say postgraduate taught students who are only there for a year, everything counts. And, potentially say international, it's like, you're paying a lot of money. You're coming here probably expecting that, I need to get this out of it, like, needing to get so much out of it. So the amount that you're up against, like it'll be it's much more risky for you to go, actually, I will try a different assessment method. So that's why I think it's like thinking about how, if you can support those students in trying different things, developing their skills in that way, you're going to be supporting so many other students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also it's more exciting. It's more exciting for us as lecturers as well, you know, instead of just doing the same old thing. We want challenge as well. So yeah, I definitely think if we have that kind of ethos, that way of learning, and it could become, you know, institution wide, then I think, yeah, definitely, why not? And then have a variety of assessments, as you say, but you're saying that, yeah, it's all good in theory, but sometimes you don't get someone that, as I keep saying, is going to remove the barriers, model it, and show you how you could do it. But yeah, that I think definitely that should be the way forward.
Yeah, absolutely, ladies, and I think also this is really the advantage of a university or higher education or any kind of educational institution, that you can experiment in a safe space, because once you are in the job, and yes, even in a job, failure should be supported, but it will have some consequences, right? Even if it's not within the company, but actually it can have an impact on the, you know, on the outcome or the client or whoever. But if you are with your lecturers, with your peers, and in an education institution, then you can experiment in a safe space and try yourself. And this should be really the space for that. So very, very, very great that it has come up. And I would like to cover a few other points. But before that, I also would like to mention another podcast, Chalk and Talk podcast. Obviously, Teachers Talk Radio has fantastic shows, but if you'd like to listen to another education podcast, then check out Chalk and Talk with Anna Stocky. Anna is a passionate advocate for evidence-based math education for students of all ages, and on her podcast, she talks about everything from effective teaching methods like we are here today, and how-to guides for teaching math facts, to tips for evaluating research shows claims. She brings on top-notch guests, educators, researchers, and policymakers, and discusses issues that directly impact teachers and students. So Chalk and Talk is for everyone interested in education, so please check them out. And now back to Teachers Talk Radio and the Twilight Show every second Tuesday from 6 p.m. with me, Timea, and my fantastic guests who are today, Dr. Gillian Stacey and the fantastic Inka Hyde-White, who represents the student voice. We couldn't talk about student engagement without the student voice. And so far, fantastic thoughts shared already. And I'd like to go a few other topics, but before that, I wouldn't want to leave this podcast or this show without asking Jill, you again, you also have experience in active learning, and just really wanted to bring back these kind of, you've talked about adapting teaching and learning so far. Could you a little bit clarify active learning? And again, if you could bring some examples of how lecturers can use it in practice.
Okay, so active learning also relies on, as Inka says, sort of modelling, making sure that students know what they need to do. Also, I'm a big fan of metacognitive strategies as well. So we talk through, as lecturers, that's the kind of modelling, we talk through our own thinking as lecturers. And if we do a live example and then we show through our own thinking processes, it's also to encourage students to recognize their thinking processes in order to use that to attempt challenging tasks. So definitely metacognitive strategies, breaking down obviously the material. I think some people refer to it as chunking, but it's also about a lot of reflection as well, evaluation, making students evaluate what they've learned, how they've learned it, why they've learned it, but also what they need to do next. So it's basically getting them to be independent learners. So I like to think of it as we, you, I. So it's basically we do together, then you do it, and then you do it by yourself. So basically, it's the kind of support that you're taking away. You have all the support first of all, so we're doing it together. Then students may do it together in pairs, and then they do it independently. So it's all about the lack of support. Well, the support that you're giving, but it's like, I suppose, riding a bike, isn't it? When you're teaching as someone to ride a bike, first of all, you've got stabilizers, and then you take the stabilizers off. Then you're running behind them, holding them, and then you eventually let them go. So it's basically that kind of support. What else? And then obviously it's all about chunking. It's all about, as I said, times, frequent periods of reflection and evaluation. And as I said, sort of giving that space where students in the end hopefully could become, as I keep saying, resources, but could actually take part of the lesson and then sort of present to their peers, which would be the perfect outcome where they have learned all their strategies and they are then teaching others. So that's the best kind of lesson, when you can say to the student, okay, does anybody want to present? Or next lesson, do you want to prepare the starter? Next lesson, do you want to introduce the topic? And then you get a lesson led by students, which is fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. Inka, have you had many of these sessions that were taught by active learning, or it's more the traditional ones?
I feel like it's been more traditional, but Jill, like what you just said, it just made me think, because I've been thinking a lot about like the alumni communities, not just at Warwick, but at other institutions. And I've been thinking about like what you just said in terms of like peer-to-peer learning and teaching back. It's like how interesting, and whether it would work in terms of those students teaching to like years, like levels below them who are coming up, and like creating those like supporting those connections, and therefore a community beyond the universities. Like by supporting those peer-to-peer connections, you feel more able to speak to us, to ask those questions like, oh, what can I expect from second year or third year, and then like be able to reach out to them like, after you've finished, or before you finish, going, hey, can I get some advice on this? Like, I don't know how to navigate the job market, or do you have any tips on CV writing? Because I think so often, like, we look at the alumni community as, we'll look at them as a community once they join, and it's like, actually, that needs to start way before they become alumni. So yeah, that was just something that I was thinking about.
And also, which I think is really big as well, and where we lose, if we're going back to disengagement, is that sense of belonging. So that would create and strengthen that, as you, Inka, are very, I know you're passionate about that, about a sense of belonging, because we don't want students that feel that they're not engaging, they can't access the materials, they're not connecting with anybody, they're either mature students or they can't connect, and then suddenly we lose them through them not feeling a part of the university. So I think that is definitely a really good point there. And also, what was I going to say? Oh, my brain's gone now. About, as you said, about using the alumni, but I think it's also for students to eventually make connections, as you say, between their learning, between the modules they're learning, between level 3, level 4, level 4, level 5, level 6, so that, as you say, they are prepared for the next phase of their university journey.
Well, like when you were saying about like we, you and I, like it made me actually think about the building and belonging framework that we've developed at Warwick with students and staff. So it's now almost 1,000 people feed into not just the development of the framework, but then like co-creation of resources and like genuine co-creation. But like within the framework, we've got this consideration and valuing of different participation types. So thinking in terms of what's being done for others, what's being done with others, and what's being led by others. Because I think at the moment, like co-creation, it can be fantastic when it's done genuinely, but so often like it's like, oh yeah, we're going to co-create, and then it ends up being consultation, and then that builds mistrust, and people disengage because I don't know if you really are doing this, or they join thinking it's going to be co-creation and it doesn't end up being it's actually already a formed project by staff members, which is brilliant, but students don't feel like they can shape it as their own. And so like just like trying to kind of just put that, like showcase and highlight the value that there really is value in doing things for others and with and by, like it's not that one is less than the other. And it's been really interesting because like we've had although this last year, so we only developed the framework 18 months, well actually not even 18 months ago, a year ago, that's when it like was kind of properly finalized, but then it was like, well, hang on, let's actually test this because it might not work. So we tested it with students and staff in all different contexts within the university. And it's been really interesting how like we have focused mainly on students, but we've had so many staff go, but what about us? Like, what about my sense of belonging within staff spaces? And so it's something that we're very much looking to support, because also like if staff aren't feeling a sense of belonging, how can we expect or hope that they can support belonging for their students? And I think something that I will just quickly touch upon is we have not defined what belonging is, because it's just going to exclude people if we do. Like it's so individual and powerful, and also recognizing that for some people they don't want to belong to the university. They want to come in, get their teaching, go home, like, you know, and they feel a stronger sense of belonging or a sense of belonging outside of the university, and that's okay. So like not trying to force it on to people, because that's just not going to work, and that's just not very respectful.
Absolutely. Fantastic points. I'm loving what you're saying, ladies, and I hope all our listeners and viewers enjoy it. Please, everybody, subscribe to our Teachers Talk Radio social media channels, and also for the Teachers Talk Radio newsletter, which you can find at ttradio.org newsletter. It is delivered to 15,000 educators every week, and it contains a curated selection of 4 standout TTR shows. Probably this will be in it this week. Exclusive discounts and exclusive offers from our sponsors. And now back to our brilliant guests, Jill and Inka, with a question that I really would like to talk about, the elephant in the room a bit, which is like, what happens when students, we talked about all the elaborate ways how we can engage students, fine, but what if they don't? And what we do with, because we will always have some, we are very lucky to have some who engage by themselves and very active, like Inka mentioned, but not everybody is like that. And we've seen it many times when we observe sessions, and this is really something that we've seen across the sector, is like when the lecturer goes and like, okay, any questions? No, okay, we can go on. Or any questions? And there will be 2 questions, and then we go on, right? And this is what I learned from Femi, actually, who is on the call. When I interviewed him, he said that he tells his students that I'm not leaving the room without having questions. And I think it's a very good point that when I hear that there are no questions, that's worrying, because that means that nobody has even gone to the depths of actually having a question. You have to understand the topic to a certain level to be able to have questions. So this is going to be my next topic on how we can measure engagement, how we can make sure that it's not always the active ones. And we mentioned the putting them in pairs, and that was very good. But are there any other ways how we can measure, how we can engage various personality types, and how we can also engage the quiet ones? So over to you, ladies. I'm sure that I can say that.
I think that obviously that comes into the same thing, sort of personalized learning. So there, you know, you're absolutely right, Timmy. There might be some really quiet ones that are shy, that know what's going on, that's learning, that actually doesn't want to get involved in the talking. So, you know, we'll find different ways. So, for example, if we're talking about questioning and we give them time and space for questioning, then that student might prefer to write down the question rather than speak the question. And as long as that to me is still engagement, because they're thinking, they've still got the question. I like to, I mean, this is where the lecture, and I don't know how you feel about this, Inka, but when the lecture comes around, I know from just looking at the class that I'm teaching, those that may be struggling, those that might not be falling behind, those that don't want to engage, that are really shy. So I will go up to them, I will talk to them. And again, it's building that relationship. And sometimes you might need to have a one-to-one with them before the class, after the class, because, you know, and I think, Inka, you made a good point as well about well-being. You don't know what's happening in their life. They might be going through a rough patch, or they might just be inherently shy. But I think there are ways we can get around that, because let's go back, this is a little bit of personal experience. You won't believe this, but I was painfully shy at school, painfully shy. When a teacher spoke to me, I would go bright red, and I was like, please don't speak to me. I know what I'm doing. I know the learning. Just don't test me on it, please. And I showed my learning through my work, through my written work. And I would go up to speak to the teacher at the end of a lesson if I didn't understand something. And I think so there's different strategies, and I think being approachable as a lecturer, I think, is really, really important. And it's about, and I've always said this, it doesn't matter how many times I explain something, I'm here to help you. Basically, I say I'm here for you. So this is what I've got proposed. This is my learning. However, at any point you want to stop me, or you want to go over this, or you want me to talk about this, this is what I mean about flexible and adaptive learning. We will do that. You know, and some students have said to me, can we go back over that? I'm like, yes. But then I'm going around the room and I'm also talking, and I know the quiet ones, and I'll go and see what have they written, what have they done, do they want to ask me one-to-one quietly there? So you don't make a big thing of it, but you do engage different strategies.
And just on that, just one question. And what if someone just is disruptive or doesn't even engage, just on their phones? Even if you talk to them, you leave them and they go back to their phones. So that could also happen in a world. What would you do? What do you
So
do
then I
then?
would definitely speak to them after the class one-to-one and find out really why are they here, what are their goals, what do they want to achieve, and how do they think they're going to achieve this. And then I'd probably talk about a little bit about my responsibility as a lecturer, but also how can I, it's a collaborative process. I can't do everything. It's all about, this kind of collaborative process, this collaborative working together. But I would go back to their goals. I would go back to why they're here. What do they want to get out of this? How what they've done, on their phone is going to help. I might even ask them a few questions about, okay, so what have we done in the lesson today? Just so that it's almost like you have to make them realize or engage them through clever questioning that actually their behavior needs to change. Yes, you can say, this is not good enough, blah, 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 but that's not going to change their behavior because you have to talk to them about something that matters. And I think it's why they originally came and what their goals are really, and how we can achieve those goals. Maybe they're disengaged because they're bored, maybe they're disengaged because they already know it, so it's ascertaining what it is, why they're on their phone.
Yeah,
And then
that's a
going
very
from
good
there.
point. And I agree with you. Nobody, as I always say, nobody can be engaged against their own will, right?
Yeah.
So we really have to find out why they don't
Why?
engage
Yeah.
and talk to them, because sometimes it's not as easy as just
And
using the
then,
technique,
sorry,
but then
Timmy,
you
and
have
then
to.
maybe giving them like a role, I mean, I used to have like class coordinator or something, and maybe they just need something that makes them feel
Great.
again a sense of belonging within the classroom, because again they might have disengaged because they don't feel part of that. I mean, it's getting to the nub, it's getting to understand why that student is on their phone. We assume it's because of bad behavior, but 9 times out of 10 it's not going to be,
Actually,
because
sometimes they take notes on their
yes,
phone, really, or they
exactly. And
just kind of
also,
search for something and
we've got
it.
to remember that they have chosen to come to
Yeah.
university. So therefore they are there for a reason, and it's tapping into that. It's tapping into their goals, it's tapping into their aspirations, and it's tapping into the future them, which sometimes is difficult for them to see. And it's for us to obviously help them envisage
That's a
that.
very good point. The future them. And I really love this because sometimes they will just be more engaged because you took the time to care.
Yes.
I think the worst we can do is not to take care of those and always concentrate on those who engage, because
Yeah.
then I always see that there's a huge gap which is just becoming bigger and bigger. They will get used to that they can
Yes.
just come to the class, nobody will bother with them. You will always concentrate on those 3 or 4, and then this gap of not understanding or being thrown off the bus, actually it just grows, and then probably they even stop coming because they feel like very uncomfortable, like coming to
Yeah.
class, I don't understand anything, and I'm not even involved, right? Inka, have you do you like these techniques? I don't know, I can imagine you're always engaged, let me assume, but you can tell me otherwise. But have you seen other students? Do you deal with that as a student union? Do you like when the lecturer actually is like coming and coming around in the class and just kind of not leaving alone those who are not engaged? Or what is your experience about this?
Well, I remember when I was massively disengaged
Okay,
because I was
brilliant.
just struggling so much. I just felt like a failure. I didn't know why Warwick had said yes to me. I just felt so stupid. And, especially when like you move in and you hear, oh yeah, Warwick was my second choice or whatever. Cool, brilliant. That's really like nice. And like when you hear like, oh yeah, like I had a tutor and like I got A star, what, whatever. What did you get? And you're like, okay, cool. Like we're from different backgrounds, we've got different grades, but we're still here. Like we're both in the same boat. So I don't know why. Yeah. But I remember, when I was really just struggling academically, and what changed for me was finding out why. So for me, it was dyslexia. And then actually I changed personal tutor, and that was incredibly powerful for me. We built really good rapport. I trusted them. I actually looked at my feedback with fresh eyes because I actually understood why I was like failing. Even though it's still horrible to look at, I had kind of that support there to go, no, let's look at it, let's go through it. And they're really patient with me. And and I feel very, very fortunate that I had them. Because, and I still remember like the first time I got like a first on an essay, and I realized that's not necessarily like success looks different for different people, but the fact that I was like, oh wow, like I can do this. Was like, oh wow. And yeah, but I was thinking actually about like some of the things that you said, Jill, and I was thinking about how powerful it can be to like co-develop ground rules with the students in terms of like setting that expectation of actually like only have your phone if you need to have your phone, or for if we're going to be engaging in an activity where it's going to be Mentimeter, okay, everyone can get out their phones, but otherwise pop it face down or turn it on do not disturb, and like but they can come up with those rules, and like and you can also say, hey, look, this would really help me participate in the space as a lecturer, and also asking them what would help them participate in the space from the very beginning, and also kind of reviewing them in terms of, hey, do you want to change any of these? Do you want to add anything? But I think if it comes from the community of students, it's so much more powerful. People are more likely to take responsibility for their actions, and also respect, oh, okay, you know what, I know that someone in this room, you know, they are hard of hearing and they really need people to only speak one at a time. Okay, we all know that now, and so that supports not just that person but everyone in the space to respect and engage in a way that might be different and might cause disengagement otherwise. And I was also thinking about like anonymous feedback channels. So like having space and time built into lectures and seminars where it's like, right, okay, let's all take a few minutes to reflect. Like, is there something that hasn't made sense today? Is there something that actually you've really liked or you'd like to know more about? And like even if like you kind of nudge that before the next lecture, going, hey, like in case you've reflected since the session, like add your work, please do add your feedback here. And even if like feedback has come to you verbally, bringing that at the beginning of the lecture to like kind of use it as a check-in with students to kind of go, hey, look, I had this feedback, I just want to say to all of you, like, this is kind of what I'm actioning, or just to like, this is why I've done this. So like students understand that there's a reason.
And how would you do it how do you do it anonymously, or what are the tools? You would use some Mentimeter or whatever, or how do you do that?
Or even like a Padlet, so it's kind of there, but obviously you need to make sure that people aren't like signed in. But yeah, like, because also that way, like, if say for example, it like you could have even like creating a word cloud, but like having, I guess it links back to what we spoke about earlier in terms of engagement and different ways to engage, like keeping feedback processes fresh, but also kind of being like, hey, look, these are like the questions that we've looked at so far, and this is kind of the work that we are doing, because also I think it is really powerful to have that transparency of, right, this isn't something actually we can action right now, but we value this feedback so much because it's going to help us shape X, Y, and Z, because just feeling heard therefore generates greater engagement from other students who are like, you have actually listened, so therefore actually I'm going to ask a question.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Will, you want to have,
we used to have discussion forums, and there obviously we talk about expectations on discussion forums, and that would be there for students' free space to put anything, to like, oh, I found this, what do you think about this, can you help me with this? And I think that's really good as well, because then once students start helping them at supporting one another, then you get those kind of expectations kind of in action. And I like to say always about, you know, what are your expectations of me as well as a lecturer? And I think that empowers them, and they feel like, actually, we are here for a reason. I'm here. I always say that I am here for them. So I'm always like, what do you want? What do you expect from me? And sometimes they don't expect that because they're so used to hearing, right, this is what you need to do, this.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, ladies. And just feedback from Femi, really interesting topic today, which is very engaging and insightful. Thank you, Femi. We're very happy that we can talk engagingly about engagement, right? Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it'd be awkward otherwise.
And we have 55 listeners and viewers live, so I think that wouldn't even fit into a classroom. Thank you, everybody, for listening and commenting, and please sign up for our social media channels to get notified about the upcoming shows, not just this one, but there are many others. And one more mention of JohnCatBookshop.com, where you can find amazing books for professional development, resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. And with the code JCTTR2425, you get 20% off. You also have some books about student engagement, by the way, I've just checked. And we have one more topic I'd like to cover, which I think we cannot miss these days, and we don't want to. How to use technology with engagement. We talked about a lot of things, and I think we all agree that you don't need technology to engage. We don't even have to explain it. Still, what is your viewpoint in like using quizzes that we've seen today, using AI tools, using any kind of technology like Padlet, as just Inka mentioned? How do you build it in? How do you balance both technology-based and non-technology-based engagement? I don't know who's Jill. Do you want to go
I
ahead?
think it's a bit of both, obviously, and I think it's really good technology for possibly, as we've talked about, Inca, different types of learners, neurodivergent learners, and I think those kind of tools should be used for evaluation and to check learning. So you're not just I'm just going to throw a quiz in here. We're just going to have a bit of fun, although the lesson should be fun and exciting anyway. But no, I think it should be used as a tool for evaluating learning.
Okay.
Yeah, I think using it purposefully, definitely. Like, don't just do it for the sake of doing it. But I think also I'd say that it's very, very necessary to use it to be accessible, to be inclusive, to reach those people who are maybe more difficult to reach for a whole host of different reasons, whether it's because they haven't been able to attend the lecture that day for whatever personal circumstances, or whether they are in the room. But I think also, like, by having say for example a Padlet, anyone, whether they're in that room or not, can engage in it. And so that's kind of a way of bridging, I guess, those people who weren't able to make it that day and those who are, and kind of being able to kind of join the dots in a way that you wouldn't be able to without that technology. And I think not shying away from AI, like showing that this is how you can use it ethically, this is how you can use it as a tool, but not as the replacement, and how you can think about that critically as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Jill.
I'm going to throw a spanner in the works here, because obviously I teach students that sometimes their digital literacy is really not very great, because obviously they're mature students or they're just coming back into education. And so this is what I mean about getting the balance right, because sometimes this can cause them more stress than obviously be helpful towards them as a tool. So I think, it's about giving them or introducing these tools sort of gradually, so that the students feel confident and comfortable with them, and that they know how to use them. Because I can see that sometimes, although digital tools are really good and they help with different types of learners, sometimes it can be one of those barriers for some types of learners, such as mature students or those that aren't very confident with their digital skills. And so I just feel we have to bear in mind that we keep it, it's all a balance, as we know. It's all a sort of balance.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jill. And Inka, can I just ask you about, because our previous, like 2 weeks ago, our topic was AI in learning and teaching. And I obviously don't want to open it up again as we are close to finishing, but just as we have the student voice now with Inka, do you see that lectures, that it's used enough in learning and teaching now, or is it something that could be used more? Or how do you see
some
that?
people are completely against it. There are certain, like, you literally go from one end of the spectrum to another, in terms of, like, some lecturers like, no, like, don't use it at all. Other lecturers are like, yeah, no, use it, and you can use it in these different ways, and are very kind of open about, actually, like, this tool is much more ethical, like, this tool isn't as ethical, like, you can use it in this way and some are building it into their assessments, and some aren't. But I think like, I sometimes think about it in terms like, if AI was as it is now when I was really struggling, I wouldn't have developed the skills that I have, because I think it wouldn't have just been a tool to me. And I think that's where it's like, you need to make sure that you are equipping those students, like you say, Jill, in terms of, like, you're equipping with that digital literacy, that ethical side of using it as well, and also just kind of supporting students in making that choice as to whether they wish to use it or not, because obviously there are environmental impacts of using AI, and so kind of recognizing that it can be okay to use it in certain contexts if the lecturer and assessment has said it is, but being mindful that it shouldn't replace, and and how might we develop students' skills with it, but also without it, because if we had a power cut, they still need to be able to do X, Y, and Z.
Survive. Yes,
Exactly.
well, it's a good point, and this is what we talked about 2 weeks ago. And obviously, we're still bring it back. We should always talk about it. And I think it's not only like general technology. It's like based on the subject, so subject-based technology. So when I was teaching, digital marketing is really about bringing in those tools that you would use as a digital marketer, right? Or in any other subject area, you would have some digital tools that the industry is using, and then students would appreciate learning about it. But yes, this is exactly what you've just both mentioned to point out. And I've also seen that some students are super geeky, techie, they really love it, and they really want to push you to have more of those. But at the same time, you really have to build in scaffolding, or probably even some extra sessions I used to build in for those who actually feel very much overwhelmed or intimidated. And would even stop coming to the classroom because they would feel like, oh my God, I just can't do anything with that tool. So I think that is a very, very good point from both of you. So thank you very much to the both of you, Dr. Jill Stacey and Inka Hyde-Wright. Thank you very much for coming to the show. Is there anything that I haven't mentioned and you really, really wanted to share? Because then I don't want to cut you off from that. Is there anything as a closure sentence or closure statement?
I would just like to say thank you for inviting me, and Inka, thank you so much for such a wonderful discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh no, honestly, thank you. I think my closing remark is just that for people to keep learning, and that engagement does look different for different people at different times, and that's totally okay. But yeah, thank you both so much. I've really enjoyed this.
Yes, thank you. It was fantastic to have a very established and experienced academic, and also a very, very engaging and absolutely with huge potential, Inka, the student voice, and whatever you do, we'll see you. I'm very sure that we'll hear you from fantastic places. So thank you everybody for listening live, for commenting, for being here. And please don't forget to sign up to the newsletter, which is now sent to 15,000 educators every week from ttrradio.org/newsletter. Subscribe for our channels. Thank you everybody for being here, and thank you to our two fantastic guests. So please listen to us, also the recording, and come back to the later shows. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.